Members, we lost a great one a few weeks ago. Senator Monning, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Members, I rise today to ask that we adjourn in the memory of former Assemblymember Khatchik, who died on March 5th. Khatchik represented the 35th Assembly District, which includes all of San Luis Obispo County, which I also represent. I first met Khatchik when we both served in the Assembly, and we continued to collaborate after my election to the Senate. Khatchik was born in Jalala, Lebanon in 1951 to Armenian parents. Khatchik immigrated to the United States in 1971 and became a U.S. citizen in 1982. Khatchik's story is an American success story. He attended Cuesta Community College, then transferred to Cal Poly, where he graduated with a business administration degree. Khatchik became a pillar of the business community in Arroyo Grande, where he opened his first of 3 gas stations in 1978. Khatchik was first elected to the San Luis Obispo County Board of Supervisors in 1998, where he served for 3 terms. In 2010, Khatchik was elected to the California State Assembly, first in the 33rd AD, then in the 35th AD, after the 2011 redistricting. He served for 3 terms in the Assembly and continued to be active in the community after the end of his term. Among Khatchik's other civic roles, he served on the boards of the Arroyo Grande Community Hospital and the San Luis Obispo French Hospital. He was appointed by Governor Pete Wilson to serve on the SLO County Fair Board and later by Governor Schwarzenegger to the California Coastal Commission. Khatchik was a public man, a public servant who voted his conscience to serve the interests of his constituents. In recognition of his service, Khatchik received many awards and recognitions. Most recently, Khatchik worked with students at Cal Poly to sponsor a bill I carried last year to create greater transparency related to costs for prospective CSU and UC students. Cal Poly students testified in support of that legislation, and the bill was signed into law. Khatchik led that effort and was so proud to see his students testifying here in the state council, in the state legislature, with Khatchik serving as their mentor. People didn't like Khatchik, they loved him for good reason, said the chairman of the Armenian National Committee of America in response to news of Khatchik's death. Khatchik was a public servant and a public man. He was beloved by the people and communities he represented, but was always quick to remind people that he drew his inspiration for his work from his love for his wife, Araxi, and his son, Harach, and his daughter, Nairi. I know that many of my colleagues in the Senate knew and served with Khatchik. Many of our Senate family were also present at the funeral services last Friday in San Luis Obispo, along with Assembly colleagues from both sides of the aisle. His legacy here and in his district will live strong, as Khatchik exemplified the best of a public servant. He treated everyone with respect and was not afraid to take an unpopular position if he felt it to be in the best interest of his constituents. Colleagues, please join me as we adjourn today in the memory of Khatchik Asajian. I know many will had comments. I just know personally I will miss Khatchik, and those that were able to attend the funeral, his children did him proud. They were very courageous in sharing very strong and personal memories about Khatchik. It was a huge community turnout to say goodbye to our friend Khatchik. Thank you.
Senator Monning, thank you. Both a friend and a colleague to Senator Monning. We'd like to turn the floor over to Senator Bradford. Then we're going to go to Leader Grove, Mr. Portantino, Senator Daly, Senator Hueso, and then Senator Mitchell. Senator Bradford, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too rise today with great sadness to adjourn in memory of not only a great colleague, a great husband, an amazing father, and just a great human being, and Khatchik Asajian. I had the honor of serving with Khatchik in the State Assembly. I met Khatchik 10 years ago as they were being sworn in, and I was assessing that incoming class, and I said, who would I have something in common with? Khatchik Assajian was the last person I considered I would have anything in common with. He was a Republican from the Central Coast, a businessman with this thick, heavy accent. But it was not until I was working a bill one day and I was a few votes short, and Speaker Perez walked over to me and he says, have you talked to Khatchik Assajian? I says, no, why would I talk to Khatchik? He's not going to vote for this. He says, Bradford, you'll be amazed. Have the conversation. That's what I did. I walked over. Not only did he raise from his desk, he looked me in the eye, and he listened to the issue, and he says, I'll go up, and if I can help, I would. That's who Khatchik was. He was a guy who didn't let party politics get in the way. He was an individual who came to this country at 19, an immigrant, not looking for a handout, but looking for an opportunity. He lived his life by Matthew 7, chapter 7, verse 7, seek and you shall find, knock and they shall answer. He came here seeking an opportunity. He came here seeking an education. What makes America great is the opportunities that this country provides, not only those who are born here, but individuals like Khatchik Assajian who came here. He came here speaking no English, and he learned English by working at a service station. Dr. Martin Luther King stated, we can all be great because we can serve. Khatchik lived a life of service. He started as a servant attendant, pumping gas, checking the air in your tire when we had full service gas stations, making sure your oil was full in your car, and washing your windows. He attended school straight from work, never to change his uniform and go straight to community college, then on to San Luis Obispo. He was an individual who believed in working and giving back to his community. He was a true public servant in the words. He was, as stated, loved by all that he encountered because he loved all those that he encountered. I took great joy in hanging out with Khatchik. Khatchik and I would make the rounds every evening to the various events. But what stood out also was Khatchik was the consummate gentleman. If there was a female staff member or third house in our presence, they could never open a door. They could never pay for a bill. And Khatchik didn't do this to be braggadocious. Many times he would slip his credit card to a waitress or a bartender and pay a staff's bill unbeknownst to them. If it was late at night and it was female staffers needed to ride back to wherever their car was parked, Khatchik would arrange a car and make sure that they got back safely. It was those type of things. Khatchik would always make sure that if he had members in from his district, he would say, Bradford, I want you to meet my sheriff. I want you to meet members from my Chamber of Commerce. I want you to meet the various people in my community. And all those individuals loved Khatchik. Khatchik even set me up on a blind date. He invited me to meet one night, and unbeknownst to me, it was a blind date. And though it wasn't the love connection that Khatchik had hoped for, it was a friendship that is ongoing to this day, so much so that it was I who called this individual and made her aware that Khatchik had passed 2 weeks ago. That was the kind of guy Khatchik Assajian is. He also texted me one day while I was out of the assembly, and he showed me a picture of a road sign, 3-foot bike lane, giving 3 feet to bicycles. It was a piece of legislation I had passed in the legislature, in the assembly, I should say. And he texts me and he says, I apologize that Roxy and I didn't take a selfie under the sign, but this is a narrow road and everybody's speeding. Khatchik Assajian was worried about everybody speeding. If you knew anything about Khatchik, he had a lead foot. We used to regale in the stories that he would tell John Perez. Khatchik was so known on that route from San Luis Obispo to Sacramento that highway patrols stopping him. they provided technically unofficial escorts. They would see Khatchik, get beside him or get in front of him and slow him down to 75 and make sure he got here. But they knew Khatchik, but Khatchik loved to drive fast. I can go on and on about my friendship with this dear man. On the last night of the assembly, we dedicated to Portico to John Perez because we love smoking cigars out there. But Khatchik was really the chair of the cigar caucus. For those who wanted to come out and have a good time, if you didn't have a cigar, Khatchik brought you the best cigars. He managed to find Cuban cigars at a time when we weren't supposed to have Cuban cigars. Khatchik was that kind of guy. He was generous to a fault. He gave of himself. That's why he was loved. He is loved. I can stand here and say, not only do I truly love Khatchik Assagian, I know Khatchik Assagian loved me. He never failed to ask about my mother anytime we got together. And like I say, he will be missed by this institution. He'll be missed by this community. More importantly, he'll be missed by all those that he touched. He's what made America great. He was a great American. He was a great friend. He was a fantastic husband to Araxi, to his son, Harach, and his daughter, Nairi. And one of the biggest honors he gave me was inviting me personally to his son's wedding a number of years ago. And I want to thank the Pro Tem for affording me the opportunity to attend his funeral last week. That was the first day that I missed legislative session in 9 years here. But it was important to me because I know if it was the other way around, Khatchik would have been there for me. I thank you for this opportunity.
Senator Bradford, that was beautiful. And you started the statement saying that his kids made the Assemblymember's family proud. You just made them proud as well. Thank you. We'd like to turn the floor over to Leader Grove.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, would like to join my colleagues and adjourn with a heavy heart in adjourning in the memory of an incredible father, business owner, volunteer, public servant, and friend, Khatchik Assagian. Khatchik was short for Khatchik, which in Armenian means little cross. And when you think about Khatchik's personality and who he was, when you talk about the cross, it's about unconditional love. And there is no doubt that all of us that worked with Khatchik knows that he represented unconditional love. Didn't matter who it was or who he engaged with. Even if he was in opposition, he always did it with an amazing love that just touched people's hearts. Khatchik immigrated to the United States from Lebanon in 1971 to further his educational journey. Khatchik's drive was truly demonstrated demonstrated what it means to become an American, to pursue the American dream. After attending community college, he proudly became a U.S. citizen. He married his beautiful wife, Araxi. They would later go on to raise two amazing children, their daughter Nairi and Harach, his son. Khatchik opened a business in 1978 when he purchased the Arroyo Grande Shell Station and later expanded to 3 Shell stations in that area. Giving back to the community was important to Khatchik, and he did everything that he did as a dedicated public servant. Khatchik made an impact serving government both in his county level and at the state level, and during his 2 decades of public service, he served communities in countless roles, including the fearless state assemblyman for the San Luis Obispo County. Even as a state legislator with many duties and pressures, Khatchik was never too busy to empower youth and give back to the community or help others, all with a warm, generous spirit. Just to share a couple of personal stories, we met at the training day. We all got put in together, as Senator Bradford said, and we go to the training day, and then in the elevator after training, I had the opportunity to meet Khatchik and his family. And so you have to picture this, and you guys will understand what I'm saying. The elevator door opens, and here's Khatchik, right? And he's got this fluffy white dog in his arms, and he has these 2 beautiful, tall, amazing-looking women standing next to him, and a very handsome son. And I said, "Oh, hi, is that your dog, and are these your daughters?" And I go, "Is this your dog?" Talking to the daughters, and "Is this your daughters?" And Khatchik goes, "No, it's my dog, and this is my wife and my daughter." So he was really proud of his family and who they were, and they were amazing individuals. And Araxi is just a beautiful woman who just adored a man that just gave her unconditional love and made her feel absolutely amazing. And I think that speaks volumes for the husband and the father that he was. I have to concur with my colleague. Senator Bradford, I do have to concur. There was a longstanding joke between Senator Fuller, Russell, and I that Khatchik would make it home before Russell could fly Jean and I home. And it's the same distance. So it's 5 hours to Bakersfield, 5 hours to San Luis Obispo. And we would get in the plane, and before we would take off, we would make jokes that Khatchik is already getting into San Luis. So that is not very far from the truth of his speed demon driving. He was an immigrant, a proud American, and a father, and a husband, and a friend. And he truly embodied what I would say is a statesman in the California State Legislature, and he will be deeply missed.
Leader Grove, thank you. Members, we'd like to turn the floor over to Senator Portantino, then we're going to go to Senator Daly, and then Senator Hueso.
Thank you, Mr. President and members, and it's been really nice to listen to the comments from so many of our colleagues about this wonderful man, Khatchik Achadjian. He truly was everything everybody's saying. A nice man, a smart man, a gentlemanly man, and somebody who you could actually have a sincere relationship in a crazy business called politics across the aisle. And long after I left the Assembly, he would text and check up on things and inform me of what's going on. He was just one of those people that did the extra mile as if it was second nature. And I think that's what made him special. And he was just doing it because he was just a good-hearted soul who cared about the institution, but cared about his family and his district and California, which gave him an opportunity to be a successful business person, and he gave so much of his life back to his community. And so honored to have known him, to have served with him, to get to know his family, and just to know a truly wonderful, special individual who touched Sacramento so well. You know, it was said that blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Khatchik was one of those people who looked to find common ground and make peace, and certainly was rewarded in this world, and I'm sure in the next. And so I'm proud to join my voice in adjourning in the memory of Khatchik Achadjian.
Thank you so much, Senator Portantino. Senator Daly, good evening. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also had the opportunity to spend 4 years in the Assembly with Khatchik, and everything that's been said here is true today, that he was really an amazing human being. I want to share just one little side story that I never smoked a cigar in my life until I came to the State Assembly. And we were at the mix. Speaker Perez was there, and Khatchik, and sitting around the fire, and they asked me if I wanted to smoke a cigar. I thought, well, I guess I better. Everybody else was. So anyway, they helped me get the thing lit and all the things you're supposed to do with the cigar. And then I smoked it like you would smoke a cigarette. I inhaled it. And it instantly gagged me, and I was coughing and choking, and, you know, of course, everybody there was laughing. And Khatchik, when he really got tickled, his eyes would water. And for years after that, he would still talk about the first time I smoked a cigar. But I want to first thank the Pro Tem for giving, I rarely miss days here as well, but I want to thank you for allowing us to go pay our respects to a really amazing human being who by the turnout and he was probably the most liked member of the Assembly across both sides of the aisle. I don't know anybody else that was more well-liked than Khatchik Achadjian. And I just want to say, if his family is watching this, that I had to bury my father 11 years ago, and I want to reach out to both his daughter and his son, who did a most amazing job paying their respects to him at his service. It is very difficult to do what they did, and it was a real tribute to their father. And also want to just share that, you know, I'm somebody who believes, and I get frustrated with God when he takes somebody at 68 years old who has many more days left. And I always wonder, that's something I want to ask God someday, is why do you take the great ones and some that aren't so great stay here longer? But I think it's because maybe that he wants to get them there with him, because he was such an awesome human being. So I want to just say to your family, if you're watching, great job. I know it's hard and tough, and we will miss your dad and your husband, and he was a great man.
Thank you so much, Senator Jolly. Members, good evening, Senator Hueso. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I don't know I can top those eulogies, but I had to rise and pay respects to a really good friend of mine. I met Khatchik on the Coastal Commission in 2008, and we got to serve together. And immediately, you know, I came to respect him very much and admire him. Whenever you visited San Luis Obispo, I don't think there is a person in San Luis Obispo that's more hospitable than Khatchik was to his friends and visitors. He went out of his way to make you feel welcome, out of his way to take you to the best places in San Luis Obispo. In one occasion, he rented one of those trolley buses. It's a trolley that designed to go around town and take people in groups. And he took a whole group of us to Morro Bay, and it was just one of the most memorable trips that I ever took. And he did everything to ensure that people felt welcome and that people really enjoyed the place where he lived, that he was so proud of and that he loved so much. And anywhere I went, I mean, it was just amazing how many friends he had in his town. And that night we're on the bus. I think he told us that he went over on the time he was supposed to turn in the bus at 6, and it must have been like 6:30. So we were doing like 100 miles an hour on Highway 101 on this thing, and everybody's, all the women's dresses were flying in the wind, because I mean, this is an open air bus. And this is the best ride I've ever had, better than any Disneyland ride. I had so much fun that day, but it was amazing. I'll never forget Khatchik. I lost my dad around the same age that Khatchik was, and I got to know his family over dinner conversations, because when people talk politics and current events, Khatchik talked about his children, about his wife, and they were, you knew that that was the most important thing to him, the way he just talked about how proud he was of his son and his daughter and how much he loved his wife. And I just thought, wow, this is just a great man. I had just so much respect for him. So I know it might be very difficult for his wife and his children. It was very difficult for me to lose my dad. His son was about my age when I lost my dad, and my dad was Khatchik's age, and it was a very difficult thing to have to, live through. And I still think about my dad every day, and he still visits me in my dreams. And I know Khatchik will be looking out for his family. I know he'll be looking out for San Luis Obispo. I know he'll be looking out for the state of California. But we will all miss him, and his life was cut short way too soon. And I can't think of a member that has served in this legislature has been more popular on both sides of the aisle than Khatchik Chasian, and maybe that will be his legacy. Nobody will ever beat him in that regard. And I have just so many stories to share about him that would take much too long. But simply, members, thank you for letting me eulogize my friend, and thank you for letting me remember all the wonderful memories that he left behind and all the wonderful things he did. When he stood up for people, he did it because it was the right thing to do. And I remember so many stories of him just saying, you know what, the governor asked me to vote for this, and I'm going to do what's right. And he did it. And because of that, he earned the respect of so many people. Thank you, members.
Thank you so much, Senator Hueso. Members, we'd like to recognize Senator Mitchell. Thank you. Madam Budget Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I, too, am a member of the class of 2010, of which Khatchik was. And I agree with everything that was said by all of our colleagues on the floor. I would simply add that he was an elegant, thinking man. And I think that's what all of us experienced in our interpersonal relations with him, in our relationships with him serving on committee and hearing him stand up and take a position on the floor. Because his family was so important to him, he always touched bases with us and our family. And I had the opportunity to travel with my family with Khatchik, which allowed him to develop a relationship with my son that lasted over the years. And Khatchik made it a habit of giving Ryan books. The next time he'd see him, he would ask him what he thought about that book. And so I will forever appreciate Khatchik for embracing my family as well. Throughout your career here, we're all captured in images by the press. And one of my favorite images that I will always honor and appreciate, which will bring a warm smile to my face, is an image captured of Khatchik and I at the back of the chambers in the Assembly by AP photographer Rich Pedricelli. And what makes it so funny is Khatchik and I don't have a clue what we were saying to each other. Because after the picture ran, and the LA Times would run it regularly, we would cut it out every time it would run and send it to each other and laugh. And Khatchik was kissing me on my cheek, and I'm holding a cup of hot tea, and I'm saying something back to Khatchik in his ear. And we have no idea what we were saying to each other. But whatever it was, you could tell by my expression that how warm I felt about Khatchik and how much fun we were having in that moment. And so I appreciate Rich for capturing just that moment in time between two colleagues that really is a reflection to the world of what our relationships can be with one another when we choose for them to be. I want to join with all of you in honoring our 2010 classmate and an elegant thinking man, former Assemblyman Khatchik Assagian.
Thank you so much, Senator. Members, we're going to give the Pro Tem the last word. Pro Tem Atkins, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and I don't deserve the last word, but I am thrilled that I got to hear what all of my colleagues have said about an incredible individual. Also a class of 2010 with my colleagues here. He was one of the most kind individuals. I mean, it is kind of amazing that you see everybody in both chambers going extraordinary distances to make sure that we do this right for someone who truly deserved it. My comments are not going to be as I think profound as that of my colleagues, but we all have stories. You know, I don't smoke cigars, but I have a humidor that was given to me by Khatchik. It stores great things, just not cigars. But it was just such an incredible gift because we had traveled to Cuba together, and he was in heaven in Cuba. You can just imagine. But, you know, to see the respect that everyone has for an individual, obviously there are lessons we need to learn in humanity about how someone could be that kind of person, a decent human being, someone who adored his family, as you've said, and someone who recognized your family. And my spouse loved him. I mean, when we traveled to Cuba together to look at ag and do a number of other things, we clearly had fun, however. It was an enjoyable trip. And when you say, one of my colleagues said he was a man of principle, when you're a man of principle and you know who you are and you know why you're in a place, how is it possible people can be angry at you? Or you know, this is an individual who was able to just defy labels, frankly, and was just genuinely a good human being. And I will say thank you to my colleagues who represented the Senate. It's not often, I think, that senators and assembly members cross over always to recognize unless they've served with someone. But many of you might not have served with Khatchik, actually, but you knew him and you knew who he was and you knew the respect that he held. The Republican leader said he was a statesman. I couldn't agree more. And we have lost an incredible statesman. And I want to thank my colleagues for taking the time to go represent us so that his family knew that it was widely held that he was someone that made a difference in our state and for this institution. Thank you for letting me add a few words in honor of a great man and pay respects to his incredible family.
Madam Pro Tem, thank you so much for those elegant words.